Hello, everyone. My name is Inferno Wolf, and welcome to my devlog. Today, I'll be telling you about how I made my submission to Ludum Jam 58. This is a story in my game, Banana Craze. For those of you who don't know, Ludum Jam is a game jam where participants are given a mere 72 hours to make a game. That's only 3 days. The event started on Friday at 3 p.m., and games were due Monday at 3 p.m. But people were given a 1 hour grace period so they could build and upload their projects. Before the jam, the people who would participate voted on a theme for the jam. The theme that was ultimately decided on was Collector. After writing down a bunch of ideas that fit with the theme, I had planned to make a platformer where the player would need to collect a certain amount of an item to progress. For some reason, the idea of chimpanzees really appealed to me at the time, so I decided that the player would be a chimpanzee, collecting bananas as they run from a predator. The problem with this idea was that 2 hours into the project, I realized that I can't make a jump mechanic for the life of myself, which is a problem, since jumping is a big part of platformers. It was 9 p.m. by the time I decided to just give up for the day and sleep on the issue. The next day, I had a brilliant idea. Instead of a platformer, I could make a maze game. I could keep the same idea of a chimpanzee collecting bananas, but instead of needing to make platforming mechanics, I could spread bananas throughout the maze for the player to run around and collect. I could even keep the enemy idea I had of a predator chasing the player through the maze. Using this new idea, I made a board on Milanote and deleted my current scene in Unity, giving myself a clean slate to start working on the game. As I was using a template that I had made earlier, I didn't need to program top-down movement for the player. I could start right away on building the maze. I used a website called mazegenerator.net to get a good maze design. After playing around with the sizes, I had a design I liked. Importing the maze into Unity, what I had to do next was trace the outlines of 2D sprites. Since I wanted to texture the walls later, I had to use hundreds of little square sprites to make the walls. Since I didn't have the time to place each square individually, nor the time to learn how to use Unity's built-in tile map system, I decided to make my own tile map system from scratch. I've done something similar before in a different project, so all I had to do was copy in that code and tweak it ever so slightly. After 2 hours of just tweaking it, I could click and drag on the screen to place tiles. Being able to save even an hour in an event where every second counts was super helpful. After placing all the tiles for the map, I next decided to add the bananas to the game. I started with a placeholder square and added a trigger collider to it. Next, I just needed to write some code that gave the player a banana when they entered the trigger. That was simple enough, and once I finished, next was to make it so they could spawn. You see, I didn't want to place static bananas, because that wasn't interesting. Instead, I was going to make it so that the bananas could spawn randomly around the maze, so that there is a different amount in different locations each time the game is played. To achieve this, I placed game objects around the scene with a script that had a 50% chance of creating a banana where the object was placed. After this, the main gameplay loop was finished. After spending a bit of time making a HUD, it was time for the scariest part of this whole project, making enemies. I decided to go with leopards for the enemy, as they are the biggest predator to chimpanzees. After downloading A-Star, my go-to 2D pathfinding AI algorithm, I was ready to start programming the leopard's logic. When deciding how the leopard would follow the player, I placed a circle collider around the leopard, which whenever the player entered, the leopard would start chasing them through the maze. The circle was a crude but effective way to make eyes for the enemy. I needed to tweak a lot of settings to get it to work, but I'm happy with how the enemy ended up turning out. Next, the game needed a menu for the player to start on. This is the design that I ultimately came up with for the menu. At the top is the title, and the bottom is a start button. In between the two, I have two text boxes. The top one counts the total amount of bananas that the player has obtained between all of their runs. This will be important later. The bottom one displays the amount of time the player spent to finish their fastest run. Both these numbers add a level of replayability to the game, as the player would want to get more bananas and try to get a better time in the maze. Now that I had completely finished the main game loop, it was time to make art for the game. I started with the sprite for the banana. I tried to use a reference to get it at a good angle, but it still looks a little bit flat. After drawing the banana, I made a sprite and animations for both the leopard and the chimpanzee. For both these sprites, I had to pull up several references from multiple angles and get the shapes just right. After I made After that, I made 4 different sprites for the ground tile and the wall tile each. The reason I made 4 of each was so that I could randomize which tiles spawned, adding variation to the environment. In spite of their imperfections, I am very happy with how all the art turned out for the game. After I drew all the art in Sprite, I implemented everything into the project. After playing around with the scaling, everything was looking pretty good. All I needed to do was integrate the animations I made into the code, and perfect! This was all looking very good. Now that the art was in, all I needed to do was add audio, and I would be done with the game. Since I have no idea how to make sound from scratch, I went to my online source for audio, pixabay.com. After finding some sound effects and music that I thought would fit the game's mood, I trimmed the edges and implemented the tracks into the game. Just want to remind everyone that I am not sponsored by any of the online tools I use to make this game. I just genuinely think that they are good resources. Everything I use is free, and I would recommend it to anyone trying to get into video game development. Now, the game was pretty much done, but it was still only Sunday. The game wasn't due until the next day in the afternoon. I still had plenty of time to add some extra features to the game. I decided to give the bananas an actual use. As it was, the game was pretty difficult. The lepers could easily corner the player and take them out quickly. To ease the difficulty, I decided to add a shop to the game. When the player is on the menu, they can open the shop and spend bananas to upgrade their health and speed. As they increase the tier of the upgrade gets more expensive. Also, I made it so that the player gets to keep half their bananas when they die, instead of losing all of them. This way, they can still purchase upgrades without needing to beat the level. With the shop done, I was able to submit my game to Ludum Jam a day before the deadline. Good thing I did that too, because I needed the extra time to make 6 whole patches after I submitted the game. It was that buggy. In the end though, I am really happy with the finished result, which you can play by clicking the link in the description. The game doesn't require any money or downloading to play, so you can enjoy it right off the bat. This was my devlog for Banana Craze, my submission to Ludum 58. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have an amazing day.